I am here this morning with Jen Liss, and I am so excited for this conversation because Jen is the queen of joy. And I can't wait to be uplifted because she's going to uplift everybody with this conversation. Big expectations. Jen, good morning and welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, you say that was a beautiful introduction. Set the expectation high, but you just bring smiles to everyone's faces. So it's just such a delight to be in your presence. Thanks for having me
Oh,
on.
God, thank you. Great. So I always start out by asking people to share with us who they are right now in this moment. What are you up to? What's going on in your life? What do you want us to know about Jen Liss?
Yeah, it's a fun moment in my life, which when somebody says that, that means that there's some roller coaster action going on.
Great. I
Roller
love it.
coasters are fun.
You got to get to that.
Yeah, I just turned 40. So I just turned 40 in December. And I had promised myself that before my 40th birthday, I was going to return fully to entrepreneurship. And so, shortly before my 40th birthday, I left my corporate gig to go full time as a coach, to go full time on the mission that I have felt is calling to my heart for the past few years. So, I'm coaching. I am also in process to obtain my trauma informed breathwork facilitator certification. So, that is hot and heavy in my life right now.
Oh,
And I live in Portland, Oregon with my husband and my 17-year-old dog who has the biggest morning routine of anyone in the world. Let me tell you, she and I just went through all the steps to make sure she's happy for the day so mom can go do a podcast interview.
you're making me miss my dog. What is your dog's name?
Her name is Abby, and she is an American Eskimo. And she's so cute. Like, you just look at her, and she just looks like the most sweetest, cutest, most lovable dog. She'll bite your hand off if you try to touch her. She does not like to be touched. She is, leave me alone. I'm
Yes.
going to do my own thing. We have often just joked that she's me in dog form because she's just so
That's so
independent and just wants to do her thing. And she's just like the cutest little thing. Like, people will just be like, "She's so sweet. Can I pet her?" I'm like, "No, don't pet her."
I love American Eskimos. They're so smart.
They're very smart.
Quick story. I had a friend who had American Eskimos and I went to visit her. She lived in California. I brought a boyfriend I had at the time who was not a great guy. I didn't realize it at the time. And the dog literally bit this guy in the butt.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was like a sign. So I think those are very smart dogs, and dogs in general have a way of telling us
It's true.
what's what.
It's true.
Oh my gosh. I am so curious to find out how you landed at where you are at 40 with such confidence and just going at life full tilt, really embodying your dreams. So I want to find out how a person gets to that place. So let's go back to the very beginning and tell us where you were born and just a little bit about that time when you first came into the world.
Yeah, so I was born into a family that had 2 girls already, and so then I was the 3rd child, the 3rd girl. 4 years later, there was a 4th girl, and 10 years, 6 years after that was a boy.
Oh,
I'm the middle of 5 children, grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and had the best, most amazing parents. Like, I had just a great childhood. So started there. So we can start there.
yeah.
That's
So
where it
let's start there.
all began.
Oh my gosh. Wichita, Kansas. Growing up in Kansas, in the middle of the country, that must have been an interesting place to grow up. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like? What does it look like in Wichita?
Or not so interesting. I don't know. Depends what you consider interesting. Actually, Wichita is it's a great city. There's a lot of cool arts, and there are things about Wichita that I didn't appreciate. So I lived 38 and a half years of my life in Wichita. Portland is very new. This is a new
Oh,
adventure for us. So most of my life was spent in Wichita, and there are things about Kansas that I did not appreciate until I
okay.
left. And that's just how
Okay.
it is, right? It's like you don't know the blessings of your life until you reflect. And but Wichita, it is the biggest city in Kansas, and it's very flat. There's one hill. I've run marathons, and so training for a marathon, everybody ran up the fake hill that somebody has built in the city. Like, it is flatter than a pancake. I didn't realize how flat it was until I moved somewhere that's not flat.
That's
Suddenly I
too
have
much.
hamstrings and a butt that I did not have
All
when I lived
right.
in Kansas.
So that's the key.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
the key.
that. What's the first thing that you remember in your life? What's your earliest memory?
This is such a beautiful question, what your earliest memory is. So I have an incredibly early memory that my mom is like, there's no way you could remember that because you were a baby.
Okay, lay it
And
on
I
us. I
love
love
that
it.
this is my first memory, though, because it shows the person who my mother is and how she cultivated joy and little moments in our life. Like everything that I love in life, I feel like I can look back on this moment and package it up. And my mom, she still does this. She'll send me gift packages in the mail that are full of confetti and glitter. And she's just so fun. She works for Hallmark and she just
Ah,
loves things like this. She did this long before she worked for Hallmark. We had gone on a road trip. We were going somewhere. I don't even know where we were going. And I'm a baby in my car seat. And my sisters each got these little packets of things to keep them obviously busy while in the
mhm.
car. But she would not let them open them until they got in the car and got on the road. And then they were allowed to look inside and see. And I remember I didn't get one. And I was like, where's mine? Where's mine? That's my first memory is like, where's my fun packet that my sisters got? And my mom she's like, there's no way that you could have wanted one of those fun packets. You had no idea what it was. Obviously, little baby me
Yeah,
was already like having some FOMO with my sisters.
that is
Yeah.
crazy. But that's so important to I love that you remember that because that's one of the things I think is so important as a parent is to treat your child as if they are aware of what's going on. I always say, if you're going to, say, for example, change your baby's diaper. I always did this with my kids where I would tell them, okay, we're going to lay down and mommy's going to get you a fresh diaper. We're going to take off your pants. We're going to do whatever we're doing, like to really talk to them and explain because babies are humans,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
we're absorbing so much all the time. That's really amazing that you have the
Yeah.
awareness to walk it through because that was my thing as a kid. I'm like, why? And even as a 40-year-old adult, the why in me is so strong. I'm like a
Hmm.
toddler,
Hmm.
always asking the why of things. And I think it's cool that that's something that you have found important with your kids.
It is. Wow, that is such a great memory. And so then you obviously got to the age where you were able to participate in these things, and it feels like maybe family outings and things like this were important?
Oh, yes, for sure. Fun moments are really important in my family. Another cool thing that we would do as a kid. So, here's a cool fact about my family. My mom and my aunt grew up best friends, and then they
Oh.
married brothers.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
obviously. They married brothers. And so my mom and aunt, they were obviously so close and hung out all the time. So my cousins and I were super close. But my aunt would do this fun thing where she would hide bags with numbers on them in the yard. And then we would each get a number and we'd have to go find the bag that had our number on it. I don't know if you ever played this, but this was a fun thing that we did as kids, like little moments like that. And just being creative
Yeah.
and finding ways to entertain us, I'm sure is
Yeah.
what they were doing. I remember them as just these moments of delight and wonder when it's, "Where's mine?" And then you get to see what's inside your bag.
Oh my
That could also
gosh.
lead to frustration when you're the last one and you can't find your
Can't find
bag.
it. Were there any clues to finding it, or did you
I
just
don't
have to go,
remember.
okay.
I don't remember. Yeah, yeah.
That is wonderful. And yes, I did have a grandmother who would do those things, and my mother would do those things as well. So I can relate to
Fun.
that. But it's beautiful to hear your experiences with that because I think there are so many families that don't cultivate those types of good times and that type of joy. So for people to share their experiences, it helps to exemplify what's important to children.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it really
nice.
is.
So you would grow up in this family where fun obviously was treasured. And as a very little girl, when you were, let's say, in the school age, do you remember anything from that time in your life which stands out?
So what's interesting, like fun was 100% cultivated. My mom is the coolest. She was like I was in Catholic school, so she did like CCD, which was like church school. So
Mhm.
she always did fun things. She was our Girl Scout leader. Like my dad's super creative. Like we had all of that. And I had this need to constantly prove to everybody that I was okay. And so
Mm.
once I got to school, and even before that, I don't know if it's like a middle child thing. I was achieving, and constantly looking to other people to show me that I'm achieving enough. So by the time I get to school, there is this combination of having fun, but then there's this need to tamp down the fun to prove that I'm the good student. So
Okay.
there was, and this has continued through my entire life.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So, like the fun aspect, but also the serious aspect. You don't want it to be too much fun. You need to show that you're being serious about it.
exactly. Exactly. And even sometimes when something's fun, it's, oh, this must not be valuable enough because
Ah,
school on the grade card, there's no fun scorecard. So school was such a different experience than having fun all the time. It felt so, I don't know, maybe it felt jarring to me as I'm reflecting.
school felt jarring.
Yeah, the mix between fun and now all of a sudden, if you're having fun, you're in trouble in school. A lot of
Wow.
times, not always, but
Yeah.
there's that right and wrong.
That is something that is so interesting to contemplate because that is one of the things that we're always encouraging people to have the joy of a child, the joy of a child. But then when you're actually a child, you're chastised when you're having too much fun. You're right. It
Yeah, so then
becomes
it
a
starts to feel
point
like
where,
something's wrong. Yeah.
yeah. Wow, that is interesting. And it's so interesting that you noticed that, maybe not consciously, but you had the feeling that you needed to have a balance
Yeah.
when
Exactly. It was
once you
not
got to school.
conscious. This
Yeah.
was not conscious until very recently. Yeah.
Wow, that's making me think. So as you were going through school, you then became a high achiever.
Yes. High achiever, would cry if I didn't get straight A's. And I have this very vivid memory. I was in fourth. Nope, it wasn't fourth because I was on the other side of the school. I was third grade and it was a spelling. I really prided myself in being able to spell correctly. Words have always been something
Mm,
that I just prided myself in being really good at spelling. I remember I had forgotten to study for the spelling test. I forgot it was that day, lost my baloney. Like, before the test is starting and I'm just getting so nervous. I'm like, I'm not going to know how to spell some of these words. And I remember peeking over at somebody else's test and cheating so that I could make sure that I got the A. And that set forth, it's not like I was always constantly a
yeah,
cheater, but it was like from that moment forward, it was just like, I have to get the A at all costs. Like,
no
I
matter
have to
what,
get yes, yes,
like that Machiavellian thing.
yes, yeah.
So that sounds actually like a dream that I have sometimes, an anxiety dream that I haven't studied for the test.
Why do we have those? Yes, I still have that about math, that I forgot all semester to
Yeah.
go to math class,
Oh, I
and
had
now
the
I'm
same dream.
showing up for the final. You have the
Yeah.
same one?
Or you can't find the classroom. You don't know where the classroom is, or the door is locked. I have all versions of that dream.
So frustrating,
Oh my
yes.
gosh. Wow. So how did you do on the test? Do you remember?
I think I got an A. I got an A, but I didn't fully earn that A. I should have gotten a B or even a C,
Do
so
you remember whether you felt that you didn't earn it when you got the grade back? Do you remember that?
I remember it didn't feel good.
Didn't feel
Like,
good.
I can actually locate the feeling in my stomach of
Yeah.
where that feeling feels. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good. It's very heavy, it's very murky, it's not light and fun and free. It's
Right.
just this feeling.
Wow. So through achievement, then, do you think you were able to get to the place of joy that you felt in those other more fun situations?
Yeah, that is a beautiful question. Yes, probably. Like, it was achievement was a way of getting to that
Of
elated
earning the joy,
high state.
earning
Yeah,
the
it
yeah.
has to be earned. It has to be earned.
Wow.
Yeah, and another story in 4th grade, I love to tell this one, and in fact, I did a speech talking about this story recently that led to some amazing moments of joy in my life over the past 6 months. But when I was in 4th grade, our teacher gave us an American history essay assignment, and I instantly wanted to write it on President Taft, who got stuck in a bathtub. That was the thing that came to mind. That first came to mind. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna write my essay about this because it's so funny." Like, 4th grade me thought that was hilarious that he had gotten stuck in a bathtub. But then I started looking around at what all the other students were doing,
Mm.
and they were doing it on John F. Kennedy or Rosa Parks, like serious things. And I don't know if those were the exact topics, but they were serious things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stand at the front of this class and deliver this presentation. I had pictured in my head, I was going to show up in this paper mache bathtub full of like balloons and it was going to be so much fun. And then it's like, I just popped every single one of those bubble balloons looking around at all of the other kids and what they were going to write their paper on. And so then I ended up writing it. I don't even remember. It was so boring. It
Oh my
was
gosh.
so wretched, even writing. All I remember is just the negative feelings around writing this paper and the like yucky feeling of standing in front of that classroom, not having fun, not being in my bubble bathtub
Oh,
presenting.
what a
So,
shame. Your teacher
yeah.
probably would have loved that too.
Oh, I'm sure she would have. She was the best. I actually had the best 4th grade teacher, but there was this like looking around at
Yeah.
everyone else and wanting to be seen as part of what everybody else is doing and wanting to do just as good or better than everybody else was doing. So that like in order to achieve, I need to do what everybody else is doing, but better.
Well,
Like that one
I mean,
level
it's
better.
so interesting what you're saying because just connecting it to what you do now and how your main focus is to help people find joy. It feels to me like there was some guilty feelings as a child over being so joyful. Maybe the other children weren't able to access that level of joy that you had, and you noticed that at some level. I don't know.
Yeah,
You could,
that resonates, and I didn't discover this. I yes, guilt around feeling good. Not even just,
yeah,
yeah, joy, but just it is bad to feel good is a message that somewhere along the way I got, and I'm sure there were probably just, like, a million little paper cuts that
yeah,
led to that feeling of being too loud at some point or too something, and
huh,
feeling bad for feeling good. It was 2 years ago, maybe that was this just like drop in realization that I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so much more comfortable feeling negative emotions than feeling positive emotions." And nobody would really understand that looking at me except maybe my
huh.
husband who lives with me and sees the behind the scenes, right?
Mhm.
It's like my joy is my natural state and then I pull myself down from it constantly. I do the bathtub thing
Why do we
constantly.
do that? I see people talking about this online. You're too happy or you're shining too brightly. There is something about that. There's like a tussle in society with that. And I don't know
Mhm.
what it is. It's so interesting that you noticed it even as a child.
Mhm. Yeah, very sensitive to just the awareness of others. And I
Mhm.
was a child, always looking to the outside and that awareness. And I think a lot of us are without realizing it. And that's for sure. I think I even heard you talk about this in one of your episodes with somebody else that's younger and younger. They're getting exposed to the perceptions of others, and social
Yeah.
media is like really shining a light on that, really reflecting that so strongly. Whereas it maybe was more subtle when I was a kid. I still
Mhm.
got the mess. I still
Mhm.
got that
Mhm.
message personally, but it was
Do you
more
think
subtle.
are you an empath, someone who really feels things deeply?
Yes. Yes.
So that starts very early on. Then as you got out of those years of like late elementary into like middle school, when things start to really shift and you start to begin adolescence and stuff starts rustling around inside of your body and things are changing, like how did that all come into play when you got a little older?
Yeah, as I got older, so I'm so lucky. I'm still friends with my 2 best friends from middle school. And we actually became friends in elementary school, but in middle school, it's like you find your weird pack in middle
Mhm.
school. I was so blessed to find these 2 beautiful women who are still in my life, and we were weird and wonderful, and it was great. Like, I middle school, we just were so freaking weird. We just, like, really embraced
I love it.
that weird, and I had a lot of fun during those years even. Thank you for this reflect this is a beautiful opportunity to reflect
I'm
on.
so glad.
In those years, I had a lot of fun in my school projects too. I allowed
Mhm.
myself to reach out and do some silly things, like
Yeah.
silliness is one of my values. And so
Yeah.
I did a lot of silly stuff during that time. And so much of that was having those 2 people who grounded me in
Mhm.
weird is wonderful. It was okay to be exactly who you are because we got you. That's
Mhm.
community of people who make you feel okay to be yourself is so dang important
Yes.
for that very reason. Yeah.
Yes, it really is, and that's when you're so lucky to have found that because that can easily go the other direction at that age.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Wow. So you did have some moments where you were able to express yourself with academic projects, and what about creative things? Did you do any art or anything along those lines at that age?
I've always loved art. I've just always been drawn to it. My older sister was what you would consider good at art. We would take the art classes together and all of her stuff would always look good and I would always be like frustrated at how bad mine looked. Yeah, I never considered myself creative, which is the goofiest thing in the world. And I hope that your listeners like will reflect on that for themselves too,
Mhm,
because it's ridiculous that I didn't consider myself creative because I ended up becoming a hairstylist. You're painting hair,
mhm.
right? So there's so many things, but at that age, I didn't see it, even though I loved doing those things.
But
I couldn't.
self-expression is a form of creativity,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so at that age, you were being creative, you just weren't maybe it wasn't a physical, tangible thing that you were creating. It was
I
yourself.
didn't see it. I didn't
Yeah,
see it as creativity. My
yeah,
definition of creativity was very narrow.
okay.
Yeah.
So that you got to express yourself with the support of these friends in middle school, and then how did that carry you into full-on teenage years?
Hmm.
What happened then?
So as a teenager, then I transitioned. So I grew up in Catholic school, very small school. Everybody knows each other, just
Mhm.
part of the achievement because it's like all of the teachers know exactly who you are all the way through school. So
It's
if you do something funky, they're all going to know this about you. And I had two older sisters who loved to break the rules. And so I was always trying to be the good kid. So there's probably some of that too. My two older
okay.
sisters were like, they're they didn't my oldest sister is so fabulous because she does not care what anybody thinks at all. She absolutely doesn't, and so then I cared so much what everybody thought. So, moving into high school, though, I went to public school, and that was
Okay.
the best thing that could have ever happened to me, but it was incredibly jarring.
Mm,
Going from all of a sudden, I was in this big cultural mix when there was one African American kid in my whole school going to this. And it was just so fabulous for me to experience all kinds of different people and see that the way that I was judging myself, like it just, all of the things that I thought were true just went out the door. It was just this huge eye opening experience for me in all the best ways.
I am struck by that you were able to have that realization of the world isn't what I thought it was like. The world is actually very different from how I thought it has been all these years up until you're probably about 14.
Yeah.
And for that to strike you at that age, it's just maturity that a lot of kids don't have.
I think part of that was how attuned I was to the outside world, because definitely by high school, my inner world completely shut down. And I focused all of everything on the outside world. I relied on other people's, like the way that I thought they saw me to tell
Okay.
me how I was doing. So that's part of that achiever is always looking to see, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I getting the A? Am I getting the A?
I love what you say about how you're aware that your inner world had shut down. So I'm wondering how this came into your like what was going on in the family at that time? What was your role there? Were you feeling like you could express yourself in that situation?
Yeah, I think so. It's when you are the middle of 5.
Yeah. So the
Thank you.
middle
I
there
was
how many
always the
middle children are there in a family of 5?
yeah,
Probably
there's
more than 1.
yeah, I was the middle of the middle. There's like a stacking that
You were number
happens,
3. Yep.
and I was just always took the role of mediator, did not like people fighting,
Okay.
always trying to calm everything down and make sure that everything was okay. So this is where it really started.
Mm,
In order for me to feel good, I had to make sure that everybody else's needs were met so that they were feeling good.
okay.
Dad's gonna be happy if I'm being the good kid because my older sisters are acting out. or
Okay.
my younger siblings are being goofy, so I need to hold it together. And then when
Mhm.
there's a fight between the siblings, I need to kind of peacekeep it because my two older sisters were best friends, and
Mhm.
then the two younger ones were always fighting. So I was just always trying to be behind the scenes like a marionette, making sure that everything's okay. Nobody asked me to do that, by the way. And it
No,
made
but
everybody have less fun because I was trying to do that. But in order to
yeah,
feel a sense of safety, that's what I
yeah.
was doing in the house. Yeah.
I feel like in a family of 5 children, there's an extreme middle child thing going on. It's not just a regular middle child, it's an extreme middle child.
Yeah.
And
In
especially
my
since the
case, for sure.
dynamics yeah,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
dynamics between the 2 olders and the 2 youngers. So you really did have to be the middle of the seesaw. You were like the was that the fulcrum?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
At the middle.
Again, nobody asked me to be the fulcrum. I took on that role.
And that came on naturally. So then in high school, was there anything that sticks out to you as a story that happened there during adolescence? We all have I have a lot of crazy stories from high school.
Yeah.
You have anything that you remember from that time that's shareable?
Because we're talking about this thematic of being goofy, but being serious. When you look
Mhm.
back at my high school, I always felt like people would just be like, wait, you're what? In either direction, because I was a cheerleader
Mhm.
and like achieving, trying to get on the varsity squad, like trying to be the best I could be, like trying to hang out with some of the popular kids. And I
Yeah.
was in drama. And
Okay.
I just wanted to be goofy with my friends. So both of these sides that we're talking about here were showing up in that high school experience. And felt like very much the outcast of the cheerleaders and not quite all the way fit in with the drama kids either. So there's this kind of riding the middle of both of those things as well, even though I loved both of them because the cheer was hitting my achiever side and the
Yeah.
drama was fulfilling my creative, fun, goofy side.
But you wanted to have a foot in both worlds.
Y Yeah. Yes. There's so much goodness in life too. Choosing is a challenge, right? When you just wanna have everything at the buffet.
I
Choosing is
know.
hard.
I relate to that. I don't think you have to choose only one thing unless it is what you want to do.
Yeah.
But that's wonderful that you were able to do that. But did you feel a sense that you needed to belong to more to one or the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm that I've probably never reflected on. Was there a desire to I think I cared more about truly at my heart, I cared more about belonging with the drama than with the cheer people. They're fabulous human beings, by the way. But I cared
Yeah.
more my in my soul, I cared more about being one with the weirdos.
Do you think
And
you wanted to just go all in on that side?
no, I love variety, like you said, and
Yeah.
that probably is simply growing up in a house where my parents let me try lots of different sports and activities, and
Mhm.
I remember at one point my mom was like, "Okay, you gotta pick one of these because 'cause you're playing basketball and you're, like, doing all the things," and my other siblings didn't want to do all these things, and I wanted to do all of them. I'm trying
Okay.
to, make up for the fact that nobody else wants to play all the sports. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about academically in high school?
Yeah, straight A's. I got 1B in physics, and it kept me from getting valedictorian alongside my best friend. And she got an A in that class and loved that teacher, and I hated that teacher because he gave me a B.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So you were
Achievement all the way.
super high achiever and
Yeah.
also a cheerleader, also in drama. It sounds like ideal.
Yeah, it was a great experience. There's not a ton negative to say. I had great friends in drama. I think high school it's challenging for
Mhm.
everyone,
Mhm.
no matter what,
Mhm.
right? So I think like a thematic of my story is that it's like you can still have challenges that feel insurmountable to you, even though everything seems fine, even though you had a good childhood, even though you had good friends, there's these things that are still happening. And so all of these like feelings were happening behind the scenes. And I'll let you move us to adulthood, but there's this thematic that's happening where it's all is so good, all is really wonderful. And then inside. there's some other things going
Yeah.
on, right?
And so what was that? Was it the same kind of guilt for feeling good or guilt for having everything go your way?
Yeah, yeah, guilt. Guilt is a very thick thread for me, and a part of that is that and this is not talking crap on Catholicism, like Catholic guilt, that's a
Mm,
phrase for a reason. It's so deep if you're not doing things the right way in that religion. And I grew up, my grandma, most of her friends were priests. Like it
okay.
was very Catholic. I have an aunt who's a nun. The best human beings. My aunt I never felt judged by her at all. And yet, if you're not doing it the right way, if you don't show up on Sundays, you're going to hell. It's
Yeah.
these things that you feel like you have to do it the right way. And
Mhm.
so that is part of my achieverness too. So that guilt if you don't. And so you almost get addicted to the feeling of guilt. Then you constantly put yourself in this state of feeling guilty, and guilt for me, like I started to get what you would call like a secondary, kind of like a secondary hit. Like I would get dopamine hits,
Mhm.
serotonin, whatever the drugs are from feeling guilty because that became the norm for me is feeling guilty instead of feeling joy. Even though it's like joy, I've lived a joyful life, but
Yeah.
internally I was feeling guilty for feeling joy. And
And you were just doing this to yourself, or was there something or someone who caused the guilt or was a catalyst?
yeah, I think there was just some inherent messages.
Mm.
It wasn't like some big event. It's just
Mhm.
these inherent messages
Mhm.
you get over time. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. So then as you started to move into your 20s, I'm getting the sense that might have become stronger, that feeling, that inside voice. That was the guilty voice or the feeling bad voice or the struggling voice.
Yeah. Although I didn't know it. I mean, I
Okay.
definitely didn't know it, but yeah, that voice continued to show up in my 20s. So when I graduated high school, I had told my mom back when I was in kindergarten, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I
Mhm.
said, I want to be a hairstylist. And that's what I became. But the achiever in me was like, you got to go to college. And I had scholarships. And so I went to college. I ran out my scholarships and then I went to hair school.
Okay.
So I achieved.
And
I
then
went
you
and did the
did
thing I
what you
wanted to
really
do.
wanted to do. Like you were writing the paper, you wrote the boring paper, and then later on, you filled the bathtub with balloons.
Exactly. Yeah. So I built my own business. I did hair for almost 12 years, built my own business. So that was my
Wow.
20s were highly focused, very achieving in that realm. And serving has just been something my family, like it's a big thing serving in the church. My mom still, she's the one who vacuums the church every week. She like goes and does all of that. So serving has always been a thing. So I just feel most comfortable in that position doing
Okay.
hair and now doing breath work is like really scratching that itch for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how old were you when you got your license and became a hairdresser? Or
21.
hairstylist? I'm sorry, if hairdresser isn't the right term. Sorry.
All of
I
them
don't
are
know. I
fine.
don't know what. So you were 21. Wow. And then you opened your own business right away at 21?
I know I started at a salon, built up a clientele, and then I
Okay.
moved over to what you call booth rent, which is running your own business
Okay.
out of a business.
Okay. Oh, great. What did you like the most about being a hairstylist?
Oh, people. Yeah, getting to have deep one-on-one conversations with people, getting to know the real person. When you're a hairstylist, there's no walls. When you think about it, you touch people more than
Yeah.
doctors as a hairstylist. Your
Yeah.
hands are literally on people. And so then they open up to you. So you're
Mhm.
allowed to have these intimate conversations that you couldn't have with other people. So I've always loved that, like getting down to the truth and really opening up. And so I love that people would tell me things that they didn't tell their spouse. And I would unfortunately learn that they hadn't told their spouse sometimes. And
What was the craziest thing someone ever told you?
oh, that's a really great question. What's the craziest thing somebody ever told you? I don't know. There was one time, this is just silly, but there was one time that this couple came in and they were getting their hair done and then they were going to go get matching facelifts. I thought that was funny, but they were like, we're going to get together on the same day. I get matching face.
And they got their hair done first? That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting because it is so intimate and you really do get to connect with people. So for you, it wasn't necessarily about the hair.
Yeah, I loved that. It was fun. The creativity side of things was really fun, but there's a lot of pressure in doing hair too and making sure that the clients are happy and you've got everything booked right and that you're running on time. There's no time to pee as a hairstylist. There's no time to eat. Your day is so booked. And so you're constantly, I think people think of it sometimes as, oh, you just get to be creative and free all day. And it's not actually, it is in hindsight when I look back at it, but when you're living it day in and day
Mhm.
out, it is pretty uniform, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever have anyone cry?
In the chair.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the time. All the time.
What does that feel like?
It just happens so frequently. People just open up. I would have clients who, yeah, I guess I'm thinking of their husband died the day before.
Oh my God.
And so then they come in and it's really interesting, just the different people. Like some people would cancel that appointment.
Yeah.
Other people would be like, I need this normalcy, or I just
Yeah.
want to look good today. And so it's interesting the different people who come through your chair because
Yeah.
then some people want to be talked to and some
Yes.
people do not.
Yes.
And I was very like you asked if I'm empathic. Like I can
Yes.
tell when somebody wants the conversation and when somebody does not. And you also learn pretty early on who wants the conversation and who does not. Not all hairstylists like are as aware
No, I
of
think
it,
that's true. I went through a phase where I really wanted only quiet services, not just my hair, but anything. I didn't feel like it was genuine, I guess, conversation sometimes with a person who was doing a service. Like it was always, what are you doing this weekend? Where are you going on vacation? That kind of questioning that I didn't, I just wanted to enjoy having the service and not have to make the small talk. But I think when you have a relationship with somebody like what you're talking about, building relationships with people, then it gets really interesting because you have this person who there's no strings attached. You could tell them anything. And
Yeah.
so being able to be that for somebody must have felt really special. And I guess that's probably what led you to wanting to be a life coach then.
Yes, it is so fulfilling. So what happened is that I did hair for 12 years and I got to this point where I was working 12-hour days. I couldn't possibly get all the clients in and I just wanted to make
Mhm.
everybody happy. So I was just
Mhm.
working so many hours to try to get everybody in. And it wasn't even like about the money anymore. I was making so much money and I was just like, just couldn't make everybody happy. So I
Mhm.
got to the point of I was burnt out. I wouldn't
Mhm.
admit at the time that I was burnt out, but I was burnt out and also just creatively burnt out because of
Mhm.
what I described earlier. Like you think that it's just all this creativity when you're
Mhm.
so booked. There's no time in your schedule for creativity. There's no
Yeah.
freedom for creativity. Somebody comes in, you're expecting them to want the usual brown they get and they want
Mhm.
red and
Oh,
it's going to frick up your entire day,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like when somebody would want something creative, I started to get stressed.
Okay.
So there was like a lack of fun for
Okay.
sure that was happening. And so I ended up going back to school. I went into achiever mode and I was like, I'm going to go finish that degree and I'm going to go prove that I can work in corporate. And so that's
Okay.
what I did. So I
Oh,
moved the next however 8 years of my
phase.
life.
Okay.
I moved into corporate. I did copywriting, which was so creative, went
Ah.
on video shoots and this transition from hair into corporate I learned so fast that you can't be that human being sitting in the chair having real conversations with people
Huh.
in a corporate job.
Okay.
There's these invisible boundaries
Mhm.
in that world of what you talk about and what you don't talk about and what you ask people and what you don't ask people. And I was like, oh, I can't have real conversations with real humans here. There's this very interesting facade that I felt was happening that
Hmm.
coming from that career into corporate was like, oh, okay.
So people are more like just going in, doing their jobs, not sharing anything personal and going home.
Yeah, they do, but they don't. There's like unsaid things. It's that conversation of, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you going on vacation?" It's those kinds of conversations and not
Mhm.
the
The
real
small talk,
conversations
that's what
that
I
I love.
mean.
It's the small talk.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like all day, every day is small talk. And you're seeing the same people every single day. I was like, I'm that was one of the big realizations was like, I'm just gonna be seeing these same 18 people
Mm.
every day.
No,
That's
that's a
so
great
different.
point. It's a great point, and that's what happens in those environments, and it creates a strange dynamic, and then it can even hinder your social ability outside of that situation. You're
Yeah.
spending 8 hours a day.
Yeah. And so I got to the point I loved that job. It was so challenging. It was so rewarding. I was learning new things. And when I finally got to scratch that itch of real human connection, I started getting behind the camera and interviewing people
Okay.
for marketing videos, advertising videos, employee experience videos. And that's when it was like, here we go again.
Okay.
Here it is. I found that connecting with human beings
Mhm.
again and
Mhm.
hearing their real stories and being able to sit down and do that. Because we didn't talk about this, but when I was a little kid, this was middle school. I had a show called the Jessie B Show. And at slumber parties, I would sit down and interview people just about, oh, did you see what, Sherry did 5 minutes ago? And we would talk about that moment. So it's just like
Yep.
silly. And so hairstyling, this little role that I got to do sitting behind the camera, interviewing
Yep.
people. And now with coaching, that's just this thematic that just keeps coming
Yeah.
up or just doing exactly what you're doing here today, asking people their story.
Yeah. When you made the transition to behind the camera, how old would you say you were?
30 to 32, 33 when I first
Okay.
got the experience to do that.
And
Yeah.
what about this underlying guilt? How did that rear its head throughout this time?
Yeah. I think that how that was rearing its head was in proving
Mm.
myself, continuing to prove that I can have a corporate career and I can keep showing up and proving. So I think there was definitely a prover mode that
Okay.
was continuing to
Yeah.
happen at that point. I'm so glad that I had that corporate experience because it gives me so much perspective.
Oh,
There was
yeah.
not really I didn't really need to do that. I felt like I needed to do that. I felt like I needed to get
Right.
the degree. I
Well, it
felt
was the
like it.
same thing as writing the serious report. It's that same thing coming
Yes.
back again. The serious versus the high joy or fun, whatever you want to call it. Like
Yeah.
that you had to always have that balance,
Yeah.
one
And
or
the
the
most
other.
fun I had in that corporate job, I ended up writing some scripts that were just so silly and so goofy. I was so nervous to share them. And we filmed them and then they ended up going on national TV. And that experience, I've had these moments of, oh my gosh, when you're having fun, when you're being silly, it's valuable. But there's the side of me that says it's not. You got to
Mhm.
keep striving and trying and making it not fun.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that is the Catholic upbringing that you have to confess your sins. You have to always remember that there's something about you that's bad.
Yeah, I think so because in the past couple of years, I have done some hypnotherapy. And so it's taken me back to some memories when I was a kid. And I don't know if you've ever done hypnotherapy, but
Mhm.
one of the things that they had me do in this session was to put my guilt in a beautiful box, wrap it up,
Mm.
hand it back to my grandmother because generational feelings, taking on generational trauma, I
Mhm.
took on my grandma's guilt. And I don't even know if it was passed from my mom to me or if it came directly from her to me, but I definitely have taken on somebody else's guilt that wasn't even my own.
What was her
And
guilt?
who knows where she got it from.
Yeah,
I
that's what
don't
I'm
I don't
wondering.
know. She
Okay.
passed before I had the opportunity to ask her why she was carrying guilt.
Did you know
So,
her as a child, your
oh
grandmother?
yes. Yeah. Yeah, I spent lots of time at my grandma's house. Yeah.
Yeah. So the generational guilt, interesting to think about that and how it plays into who we are today?
And who carries it? I think that's what's so interesting to me. I look at other members of my other siblings. Not everybody's carrying guilt in the way that I am carrying it. So sometimes it activates in one,
Mhm.
might not activate in another, and we all play these different roles. And that was the role
Yeah.
that I played, was feeling like I had to hold all the things for all the people. Like I've got to hold so that everybody's happy.
But that was your assignment, like coming into the world to
Yeah.
be able to learn something from that. And so as you got into your 30s and you were able to kind of flower and blossom a little bit more with what you really wanted to do and the interviewing and being with people, is that when your whole focus shifted into the coaching world?
That was a slow trickle. So what happened
Okay.
with that corporate job is that I got basically to the point that I was at with hair. I'm
Okay.
working all the time and I'm not feeling fulfilled. What
Mhm.
is going on? And so when it happens once, it's, oh, this is frustrating. When it happens again, you're like, I'm sensing a pattern. What's
But you knew
happening?
what to do. That's the thing that strikes me, is that you had the courage to make a change, because how many people just don't make a change? They
Yeah.
stay stuck in that feeling, and you knew that you had to follow the good feelings because you had that in your background. Even though you also had this generational guilt, you had your parents and your grandmother had instilled in you the importance of having fun and the importance of having joy in your life.
Yes, for sure. And that intuition, whether I knew I did not know that's what I was following at the time, was this intuitive hit toward the
Mhm.
joy, was that pull toward the joy, toward the fun. That's what was happening for me.
Yeah.
And I want people to know this sooner, that the fun things for you, like what's fun for me is not what's fun for you. Like silly, goofy stuff, that's what's fun for me. Connecting with humans, that's what's fun for me, but it not might not be fun for you. And we all have our unique things that we're being pulled toward. So when I was doing hair, I had gotten into this state of not having fun. There was no
Mhm.
fun happening in that zone. It was the no fun zone. It had been fun. It became not
Yeah.
fun. And same with this other role. Like it was fun and then it was not fun. And I was like, something's going on. I need to get out of here. And that's when I found a coach
Mhm.
and started working with her, Kathy Heller. I found
Oh, yeah.
her. And what she helped me do was to shine a light on all this stuff that was happening. And
Yeah.
so I think I was intuitively pulled to her. I had found her podcast. And so I was listening to that and starting to reflect and really seeing like what is going on here. And that's when she said, it's the joy, like it's
Mm.
the creativity. That's where all the goodness happens. And I just had
Mhm.
this like
Mhm.
epiphany for
Mhm.
myself that I have been pulling myself toward guilt and not toward fun. But the
Mhm.
fun was like happening in my subconscious. Like my conscious
Mhm.
mind was like, no, I need to go do all these things. We need to worry about so much about what other people are thinking and make sure everybody's happy. And my subconscious, no, let's go have fun.
So then you started to learn to listen to the subconscious, to tune into that.
Now, yes, which is coaching, which is why I'm
Yeah.
just so passionate. So my podcast is called Untethered, and it's really untethering ourselves from all of these things and coming back to our true self. Like, what do you really care about? What is your magic that you came here to create? And this whole story that is behind you is part of that. Like, it's led you to this point. I have no regrets of not doing certain things sooner. And the journey has been the journey. Like, the awareness that she helped to gift me and having that coach who shined it for me happened when it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
It takes a lifetime. That's why we live such a long time, because it
yeah.
takes a long time to learn what we're supposed to learn.
Yeah. I think there can be just like this guilty, here we go with guilt, I guess. There
Yeah.
can be this like self-help sometimes where it's like you feel like you've done things wrong. I
Mhm.
just want people to know you've done nothing wrong.
Right.
Everything that came with you to this point was meant, it was all meant to be
Yeah.
exactly as it's been. Yeah.
Everything is as it is meant to be. I fully believe that. Helping people to appreciate that and to let go of things in their past that might be holding them back, is that a focus in your work with people?
Yeah, it can be passed for sure. So in my coaching, I help people to identify not just events, but also feelings in your body, because I think
Mm,
that can lead us to so much. A client who they remember something, I'm like, okay, but how did you feel in that moment? And tears will just start rolling down people's faces because it's like we haven't allowed ourselves to fully go into a moment. And
yeah.
so that pulling it back and really getting down to the heart of things, I think is
Mhm.
so important. It's been so important for me in my
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Is there something from your life that you haven't allowed yourself to fully feel?
Oh, me? I'm sure that there is. I'm sure that there is, and it will reveal itself when it's supposed to.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's part of the journey. It's part of the untethering. I
Right.
like to say it's like we don't have to unroll the entire
Mm,
ball of yarn right now. It's okay to do it bit by bit and
mhm.
experience exactly what you're experiencing along the way. It's like not a point to get to.
Yeah.
It's enjoying the journey exactly as it is.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. Not forcing it, taking a look at your life and who you truly are, which is essential, but not forcing the realizations
Yeah.
to allow them to come in their own time.
Yeah. And I say this, it's a challenge of mine because I want to get to the next thing as
Oh,
an
yeah.
achiever.
Yep, I get that.
You want to get to the next
Yeah,
thing. But say, are you an achiever? Do you
I'm
identify as that?
totally an achiever. Yes.
Yeah.
And I understand how you feel with wanting to have a toe in every pond. I'm exactly like that. I think that the fact that you have this highly creative side and the practical side, that serves you so well going forward. So that even though it's a point of maybe feeling like you're on the fence, it's also what is fueling your success, I think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I kinda wanna praise fence sitters. It's okay to be a
Mhm,
fence
mhm,
sitter. There's
mhm.
nothing wrong with it. You can see both sides of things like you just mentioned, and this phrase came to me in the shower several months ago that just makes me laugh every time I think about it because I think it just describes me, just farts and philosophy. Goofy and, like, really getting down to the heart of, like, why the heck we're here.
Yeah,
So both of those things, it's like they can live together in one human being, and
yeah,
whatever your 2 things are, mine's arts and philosophy, yours
I
might
love
be
it.
something else, but I think
I'm
fence
gonna think about
sitters
that.
can
Yeah,
often have these 2 sides of themselves.
definitely.
Yeah, if
And
you
that's
reflect, do you have 2? Do you have
I
2
can't
sides of
think
yourself?
of 2 off
Yeah.
of the top of my head, 2 great words like that, but I definitely have that. And I always say this, I'm not a person who ever puts herself in one camp. Like, I've never really felt comfortable going all in joining any particular thing as a blanket statement because I am so nuanced in my personality and I'm so open minded and can see always so many sides of things. And I like to think about things and analyze. And I'm really cerebral in that way, but also extremely spiritual and emotional. So I have all those sides of me. Like I can't define myself. I think I don't fit with a label. I guess there's some labels we have. So let's talk about this. If you had to label yourself, I don't necessarily like to label myself, but there are some labels that I have. I have mother, I have daughter, I have sister, things like that. What do you think about the idea of labels? And if you had to label yourself, what would you slap on your forehead?
Yeah, as a business owner, you have to niche down so that people know who you are and how to find you. And I practically so understand that. And I really struggle with doing it
Mhm.
because of everything that you just described. It's like so many things.
Yeah.
So to show up in the world as a certain label, it's challenging because there's so many things. And I've always found that ridiculously interesting with people even doing hair that somebody would be a psychologist or they would have some like really lofty type, but then you find out that they are also they're a painter and all these things. Like everybody is so many things.
Yep.
And yet as human beings, we want to label things
Mhm,
because it
mhm,
helps us fit people in a box. It helps us
mhm.
understand them. So I also understand that because I love the Enneagram, like things,
Yeah.
human design, all of those things that help us make sense of the like really complex people who we are,
Yes.
it can be so helpful. So I think it's great to remember both. And I think part of untethering is untethering from the labels, the expectations, the judgments, like all of those things get back down to the human who you are. And then you're seeing those labels from a different perspective. I know who I am. I know what really matters to me. And now I can just layer on whatever label I want. It doesn't matter. Currently,
Yeah.
I call myself coach, speaker, expert, goofball. Those are
Yeah.
3 things I've got listed on my Instagram. It's just like these 3 things fit me. They're not defining all of me.
Yeah.
They're 3 things, but I know who I am at my core.
Yeah.
So those labels don't matter as
Because
much.
they
They can
change.
change.
They're fluid.
Yeah.
And who you are, your essence is emerging constantly, I think, throughout your lifetime. Like you're getting to know yourself and you're in touch with what's on the inside and listening to the inner voice and all of that. But that develops too over time and it emerges. It's like full self actualization, full enlightenment is something that we as humans don't achieve easily or if at all. What do you think about that?
I think it's just it's a constant thing. I
Yeah.
love the idea of self actualization
Mhm.
and always moving closer and closer toward that. I think our journey, is it done when we've fully actualized though? And I think I've had a fear of that, to be fully honest with you, as a kid who grew up in church. I'm
Yeah.
like, if I'm the best human physically possible, then I'm going to get killed because I don't
That's the
need to
end.
be here anymore. So there
Right.
is this thing in the back of my mind that if I'm too good, I'm going to die because I have no reason to be here anymore. So it's like, you got to keep messing things up. Otherwise, they're going to get rid of you because there's no purpose to you being
Right.
here anymore. So
Yeah.
that's like this weird little voice in the back of my head, but voicing it in case it resonates with anybody else.
Yeah. Why do you think we are here?
Why are we here? I think we're here to experience the beauty of what's here, to just be it. I think just to fully get back down to the source of exactly what it is, that source of creation and wonder. I think we're just here to be, but we make it really complex. But what
Yeah.
it is complex, I don't know. I don't know, Mitzi. Why do you think we're here?
I think we're here to learn. I think we're here to learn
Yeah.
lessons.
Yeah.
I really believe we're here to learn lessons.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you prefer to work with people who you label high achievers and perfectionists. What do you do for them? What is their problem, you think, that they're trying to solve mainly?
Yeah, often the problem is looking to the outside. So much of what we talked about, seeing
Yeah.
things through other people's eyes. A lot
Mhm.
of achievers, a lot of perfectionists, we're that way because we're not looking at it from the inside out. We're
Mm,
looking at it from other people's. So it's coming from the outside. And
mm,
that's what's driving our decisions. And that's how people end up in unfulfilling careers that aren't for them because they feel like,
mm,
oh, this is the one I should have done. It makes
mhm.
money. If my dad really thought accountants were like, that's like the epitome of a great career. It's like, whatever that accountants, you're wonderful human beings. Some people love it,
Yes.
but we
Yes.
need you.
Yes, you do, but I know what you're saying.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a lot of times like you come to a point. I think achievers come to a point of reckoning where I've done
Mhm,
this for so long.
mhm.
All of a sudden, I realized, this was me at least. I don't know who I am because the life that I have lived from my perspective has been from others' perspective. Now, when
Mm,
other people look at my life, they're like, oh my gosh, you've done all these cool
yeah.
things that are so aligned for you. But while I was experiencing them, I wasn't realizing that. So I think it's just so important for people, even just younger and younger, to start realizing what really matters to you. And that's good and great and okay. And there's nothing bad about doing the thing that really lights you up. That's truly, when you ask what we came here to do, it's shine your bright, beautiful light because
Mhm.
that's what you came here for.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with society's definition of achievement versus the feeling because when you
Mm,
have achieved, in air quotes, something that society deems valuable, you don't necessarily get the feeling of fulfillment that you think you're going to get. But if you achieve a goal that you have in your heart, I don't know, climbing a mountain or creating a painting or something like that, it's more fulfilling in some ways. And I think there's often a mismatch, like what you're talking about, of talked to a lot of people who've achieved really great things in terms of traditional standards, but feel very unfulfilled on the inside.
Yeah, lots.
I know.
Lots of people feel that way. Yeah. And I think you're really getting down to the heart of it, that fulfillment is not a societal expectation, is not a relational expectation, it's not a cultural expectation. Fulfillment is something that's coming from your connection to source, your connection to creative power, like your connection to the being that you are. Like that connection, the closer you can get to that, the
Mhm.
better, which for some people it is painting. For some people, it's poetry. For some people, it's just getting out in nature. For other people, it's working with numbers. That's what you
Mm.
came here to do. Like, we all have these different things that really light us up. And
Mhm.
remembering that what's fun to you is not necessarily what's fun to somebody else. And what's miserable for you is fun for somebody else.
And to
So
allow that to be, and to
do
not
it.
have this judgment of people who are doing something that lights them up just because you don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
interesting.
And that judgment, when we have that judgment of others, there is a thread for sure of
Mhm.
judgment that it's for ourselves. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the things I do with
Yep.
my coaching too is, okay, where are we feeling judgy?
Mhm.
Because there's something here. There's
Yep.
something here for us in
That's
that
the
judgment.
mirror. That's life holding up the mirror to you. And
Yeah.
that's what I think is that's the underlying thing, that where the universe is telling you, here's something you need to learn. This is your job right now to learn this thing so that you can move to the next level. You can ascend in your consciousness. You can get more in touch with yourself, the true being that you're talking about. So, what would you say are some of the biggest lessons that you have learned in life?
The biggest lesson that I have learned, one is know yourself. Get to know yourself. Allow yourself to feel what is here in your body.
How do you do
Al-
that? What things can you do to get in touch with yourself?
Yeah. So one of the things that you can do, there's something that I call feeling like joy expansion. So feeling joy in your body, because I think this is a very common thing in our
Mhm.
society. And as we've talked about today, like you can see that thread through
Mhm.
my life that I was experiencing joy, but I wasn't fully allowing myself to
Yeah.
feel it. I was
Yeah.
gaining joy, the feeling of joy through guilt. So like I
Mhm.
would do something that made me feel bad so that I could then feel the good, and what I didn't realize is that I could feel joy right. So what I encourage people to do, and your listeners can do it alongside me right now if they want to, you can do it with me
Yes,
if you
I'm
want
gonna
to
do.
right now.
Yes, I want to do it right now.
Do you have anything on your desk that you can hold? Something tactile,
Sure.
or just put
I
something
have
in your hand?
a pen.
Pen, that works. Yep. Just put something in your hand. So I have something, she's a rock and her name is Penny the Penguin, and she's my thing. So you can have a thing that you use all the time.
Oh
You
no, I have a
put
better
something in
thing.
your hand.
I have a better
Okay,
thing.
grab a thing. Grab a thing.
I have a seashell.
Oh, push the seashell. Yes. Okay. That's beautiful. Now, the thing that you hold does not have to be connected to the feeling. It just becomes your thing that helps you access your joy. Okay. So hold something, listeners. Mitzi, hold something and close your eyes. And now think of a time you can remember having so much joy, a moment when you could feel so fun or free, or you're just overwhelmed by happiness, a sense of pleasure. Feel that feeling in your body. Maybe it's a little bit bubbly, maybe it's light, maybe it's warm, whatever feeling it feels like. That's wonderful. That's okay. Just allow yourself to feel that feeling in your body. Settle in with it. Maybe take a couple of deep breaths, really feeling that sensation from that joyous moment. Where is it in your body? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your chest? And now seeing if you can just extend that sensation. If it's in your chest, maybe moving it down to your diaphragm, maybe spreading it into your arms. it's in your stomach, maybe moving it up closer to your chest. And now see if you can, if it feels good, moving that sensation even outside of your body, growing that sensation, seeing if it can envelop the entire room. Just feel into that for a moment. And then allowing that sensation to slowly move back to its original source. Taking a moment to simply memorize that feeling that you felt in that moment of joy. Remembering the texture, remembering where it exists in your body, feeling your hand on the object that you're holding while you feel that sensation. Now drawing your attention fully on the object in your hand, coming back to the present.
Oh my God. That was beautiful. I had a wonderful memory. I'm actually going to cry. Thank you, Jen. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Are you willing to share? It's
Yeah.
okay if not, I'm just curious.
No, it's funny because I had a vision of this pair of sneakers. When I was a little girl, my dad still lives in this area in rural Pennsylvania, and there was a creek nearby. And my grandmother used to take the grandkids to swim in the creek, and you had to have old sneakers on because it was very mossy and there were rocks on the bottom. So I had these old sneakers, and I cut all these holes in my sneakers. I don't know why I've wanted to cut holes in them. So I cut holes in the sneakers, and those are my creek sneakers. And that was the vision that came to my head, is those sneakers. They were white sneakers with blue rubber on the bottom. And my grandmother had secretly gone to this spot by the creek, and she and my grandfather had cleared the bank of the creek and put down some astroturf on there, like carpeting on the bank. And she did this as a surprise. So after went, we drove in her little old car through the field and got to the spot, and we went there, and it was just like this beautiful little picnic spot that they had created. And we went swimming in the creek, and it was freezing cold. And I remember the water being like up to my chest. It was really high. And then afterwards, all my cousins and I got out. We went up onto the bank in our towels, and Nana had butterscotch crimpets and sandwiches packed. And it was just like the best. It was just the
Oh,
best
I
day.
love that.
So, thank you
I
for
love that. And I think one of the interesting things is that everyone has a different memory that comes to mind. And the one that comes to mind for me is actually not what some would consider a happy memory, but it was the last breaths of my dog Moose as I held his paw. Because for me, the joy and just the gratitude that I experienced for having lived the life with him that we did. We had 10 beautiful years with this, like, he was just joy personified. That's where I go. And so I say that because if someone's listening and what came up for them was not butterscotch crumpets, whatever that came up for you is beautiful. It's beautiful. And there is a speckle of just something just so luscious there for you. And the more you can go back and return, hold an object, feel that feeling, feel yourself grow that feeling, then you start to return to that very true to you joy state more often. And the more you can memorize that, the more you can return to it, come back to it consciously instead of doing it unconsciously. You can consciously bring yourself back to joy, and you start to magnetize more joyful moments into your life.
I
That
love
way.
it. And then
I mean, the
put
biggest lesson. Oh, go ahead.
Put this seashell in my pocket today so I can
Love it.
feel that, connect to
I
that
love
feeling.
it. I love it.
Yeah. So tell us, what else do you think are important lessons that you've learned?
Yeah, I think the second most important lesson is it's really all the same. I've got to be fully honest with you. Like, it's really all the same. Coming back to you is the biggest thing, because for achievers, for perfectionists, for those of us who find ourselves chasing the next wonderful thing, because that's a lot of achievers, we're chasing the next thing. So we're not living the joy of now. We're not living the extraordinary moments that are happening in our lives right now. So that biggest lesson for me is what really matters is what matters to me. And I'm
Mm,
still learning this lesson. So many of us are. That's part of the journey you asked. I keep coming back to that question that you asked, why are we here? Part of it is to come back home to ourselves. Yeah.
what really matters is what matters to me. That's beautiful.
And it's because you were brought here with a mission. You were brought here with gifts. You were brought here
Yep.
for a purpose. Every single one of us has this magic inside of us. And it's why I'm so passionate about helping people shine,
Mm-hmm.
because that your shininess, your magic that's the whole reason you're here, is to
Mm-hmm.
be you, is
Mm-hmm.
to be wonderful you. What matters is you being more and more of that over time.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. What about the blessings?
Uh,
What are your biggest blessings?
Oh, my biggest blessings. My husband. My husband is the most wonderful human. We met in high school, and
Oh,
we both knew.
you're married to your
And
high school sweetheart.
yes, I suppose we dated our senior year, and he was dating my best friend,
Oh,
and we ended up getting together. So that was very dramatic, but we both just knew. We both just
yeah.
knew very quickly. And I didn't always appreciate that because I was like, why do I have to meet my husband like so young? And so it's so funny, but he's the biggest blessing of my life. Moose, my dog who passed away last year that I just mentioned,
Yeah.
huge blessing in my life. This weird 17-year-old American Eskimo who won't let us touch her without biting us, huge blessing.
Oh my
And my
gosh.
family, despite like I say, we all have these things about our childhood. Like my mom is the most amazing human being on the planet, so creative. My dad is just so in service of others. And my siblings are just hilarious, amazing human beings. We have so much fun. Even though they're all in Kansas and I'm in Portland, we still
Aw,
find ways to have so much fun and stay connected.
that's great. What do you think is the most important thing?
Most important thing is realizing your unique magic and that it has a purpose. Came here with a purpose, and your purpose is to discover that purpose and to allow it. It's not even a discovering, it's an uncovering. It's
Yes.
untethering from all of the things that we think we're supposed to be so that
Mhm.
you can be the beautiful me who you really are.
Yeah, I love that. So here's to you helping more people to discover that in themselves.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Jen. I love this conversation and I have learned so much. I can't wait to reflect back on it and maybe do a little journaling on some of the things you touched on. And especially thank you for that beautiful exercise. I hope everyone got to experience something meaningful there. It certainly put me in touch with a great feeling for the rest of my day, at least. So thank you.
I'm so glad. Yeah. And if somebody was driving while we were doing that exercise, I hope you didn't
You'll have
close
to
your eyes.
rewind, listen to it at home. Don't do it when you're driving.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, thank
So
you,
I
Jen.
just have to say just a bit of gratitude for what you do in allowing people to come and dig into their stories in this way, because I had realizations for myself. And that's one thing that I guess I want to close this podcast with, is that there are blessings and blessings in reflection, because put yourself in more positions to reflect on the things in your life, because that's where the lessons come from, is having the opportunity to reflect. So speaking on stage, putting together those speeches, coming on podcasts, having my own podcast, opportunities to reflect. And that's when you go inside, is in those moments. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for this,
Oh,
such a beautiful interview.
you're welcome. You're welcome.